Hey, welcome to the first episode of Chad's Beer Podcast with me, Chad of Chad's Beer Reviews. My first guest, fellow Baldy Kyle of No Hype Beer Reviews. What's going on, man?
What's up, Chad? Thanks for having me, man. This is an honor. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I will say, like, your beard is like 1,000 times better than mine.
My wife just commented today, actually. She's like, it's getting a little long, isn't it? So that means it'll be cut soon. So,
Yeah, I have a lot of like blank spots on mine, and I don't know. I can't really tell from the video, but like I don't know how your hairline is, but like mine's like it's the worst because it's receding in front and also the bald spot in back. But like I'll never have like that horseshoe where it's just
yeah,
bald on the top, which would actually I think would be better.
I'll put it
Like,
this way. I have more on my face. You have more on the top of your head.
mhm.
That's the trade-off.
How long have you had this kind of look?
Okay, so I guess, yeah, podcast, right? We tell these stories. So I was in college, and one of the people I was living with was a hairdresser, and she would cut our hair, and it was awesome. And one day she's cutting my hair, and she goes, "Hey, Kyle, you're thinning." I'm like, "Hey, thanks for noticing." She's like, "No, I mean your hair." And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "I'm 20 years old. What are you talking about? You don't lose your hair at 20." And
Mhm.
she's like, "Yeah, you do." And by 21, I was shaving my head and had a goatee. And then a cute woman said, "You should grow a beard." I said, "Oh, okay." And then no cute woman has told me to do anything different since. So yeah.
Really? So you've been shaving your head since your early 20s?
Yeah, so going almost on two. I'm turning 41 this year, so almost 2 decades. Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Well, you're a couple of decades ahead of me because I just started last summer.
yeah.
Yeah, because I used to have, I was in the Navy for a long time, and I
Oh wow.
had the kind of like a cop haircut.
Yeah.
Sorry, my cat Logan is over here. By the way, before we get started, we should say what we're drinking. So I'm drinking Victory Tasty Cake Coffee Cake Ale. It's a beer that's meant to simulate coffee cake in beer form, and I will say it actually does a pretty good job of that. I'm surprised. What are you drinking?
That's so wild. Well, we inadvertently both did PA beers, so Trogue's Nugget Nectar is what I'm going with. I look
Man, we
forward to it
can't get
every.
that in Florida.
No, oh my goodness, I love this beer so much. I do. I look forward to it every year. They
Okay.
have a double version, but I haven't gotten it yet. But I definitely
Really?
want to try it.
Man, we're gonna have to do a trade. I need some Nugget Nectar in my life. I remember that usually comes out. That's like a once a year release, or do they do it
Yeah,
year round now?
yeah, yeah. It
It
hit
comes
our
out.
area like a week ago.
Yeah, it always comes out in January, right?
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah, I
think
always
so.
remember it would always come out like right around the Super Bowl or
Yeah,
when the playoff started or something.
yeah.
It's
I
funny
drink it.
because sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I drink. This is typically what I drink during the Super Bowl. Yeah.
Mhm. And also, do they still make Jenny Bach?
Yes. Yes.
That was a
Yeah.
favorite of mine too.
Yeah.
Can't get Jenny in Florida. You might
Oh,
be able to
really?
find. Maybe you could find Jenny Cream Ale.
That would be my guess. Is if there was going to be one, it'd be the Cream Ale, which is also a beer. Like
Yeah.
my dad's side of the family, that's like the family beer is Jenny Cream Ale. I like that beer
Yeah.
quite a bit.
What was I gonna say? Oh. So what I was gonna say is Kyle and I, aside from both being beer tubers, like we have this amazing coincidence that Kyle's. I don't know. Did you grow up in Binghamton or?
Yeah, so I grew up like 15 minutes from Binghamton in a town called Endicott, New York. The big claim to fame was birthplace of IBM.
Mhm,
So yeah, so I know Binghamton
mhm.
well. Lived there a little bit with my wife.
Yeah. And the shirt I'm wearing now says Johnson City, and like that's the city right next door to
Yeah.
Binghamton. Because that's where my sister lives. And for some reason I always thought you lived in Wisconsin or Minnesota or something. And then like a week ago on Instagram or something,
Yep.
there's a brewery in Binghamton that's closing, and then we just kind of got talking like that, and then and I said, like, cause you said, I used to live in Binghamton. I'm like, oh, where do you live now? You said Albany. I'm like, oh my God, that's where this show started. This show started. Technically, I live in Gilderland.
Yep.
We were just talking off camera, and it turns out like where you live now and where I used to live is probably only a few miles apart.
Yeah. Yeah, it
When
is.
did you move to Albany?
So this is what, my fifth, 5.5 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
5.5 years ago.
And what came first, the channel or did you move there first?
I was doing the channel when I lived in Binghamton. Yeah, I So I was living in Endicott, and then my wife and I got engaged. So I moved into her house in Binghamton, lived there for a couple of years. And yeah, it was just that thing of I was watching beer reviews, and I'm a teacher. So I'm like, well, I'm used to explaining things. So I'm like, I bet I could do this, So then I started trying to, and then, yeah, just kept going. And we moved, and I was doing it in this room. And my wife's like, well, you have all that beer in the basement on those shelves. Why don't you do it down there? I'm like, yeah, that actually makes way more sense. I mean, nothing wrong with this room. It's a cool room, but way better down there.
Yeah, I that's something I noticed when I first saw your channel a while ago. It's just like you had like that awesome cellar collection.
It's
And I noticed like most of your bottles are actually waxed. You do that yourself?
Yeah, yeah. I got into aging. Probably like a lot of people, when you get into craft beer, you read up on it, And I was reading about aging beer, and I think there was even a little book I read that was specifically about aging beer, and got some of the ones that were recommended. And then I was seeing, beers would come with wax sealing, and I don't know how much it really helps with oxidation, but taking the time and effort to wax seal them definitely, at least psychologically, made me want to age them longer. So yeah, most of those I did myself. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a small collection when I lived in Albany. I had like some of the Chimay, like Chimay Blue.
Yeah.
I remember I don't know if you remember, Southern Tier did a cuvee series like 10, 12 years ago. It was like basically like a barrel-aged barley wine type beer.
Were they named was like just Cuvée 1?
Yeah, it was like 1,
yeah.
2, and 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember having that. I had that in the fridge, like the main food fridge, for like a year. And like every time I open the fridge, I see this 22-ounce bomber in the back. And, it took me like a year and a half or so to finally drink it. And it was good, but it wasn't worth like a 2-year wait or however long I sat on it.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's definitely an experiment. You're not guaranteed, good results. Yeah.
That's something that if you follow me on social media or you follow my community posts on YouTube, like some of the stuff that I post is like it's halfway between trolling and like legit. And something that I like, especially when it comes to that, is cellaring. Is like I did this like a month or two ago, maybe it was 3 months ago. I said most people who cellar beers like are selling the wrong beers for the wrong reason. Like I really don't think, in general, I would say like 90% of the beers that people are cellaring, like there's nothing to be gained by cellaring them. Like the reason to put a beer away instead of drinking it fresh is that there's going to be something better about it later on down the road. And I can only think of like a handful of beers where that actually is true. For me, it's like Founders CBS. I remember like when they re-released that in like 2017. Actually, me and my friends reviewed it on this channel somewhere. I'll put a link. And it was like so hot at the time. I think that was like Christmas of 2017. Might have even been earlier, or the summer of 2017. And then we came back to it a couple of years later, and it was like really smooth. And nothing else that I've had cellared since then, like maybe like J.W. Lee's or like Dogfish Worldwide Style, something extreme like that.
Yeah.
Bourbon County maybe. But otherwise, like, can you give an example of a beer that you gain something from cellaring it?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely get changes, obviously. Like you said, the goal would be it's better or different, but still as good or something, The first one for me was Bourbon County, and I liked it fresh. And then a good friend of mine who was, maybe a little ahead of me, even with the beer scene, was like, I think it's even better after a year. So I'm like, well, I bought a 4-pack, so I'll drink 2 now and see what I think the year later with one of them. And I agreed. And you're right, like with the harshness, any sort of like alcohol, I think flavors can meld. And maybe for most of them, maybe a year is the best if that's your goal. Is the alcohol is a little less prominent and some of those flavors. To me, sometimes it can be like fireworks of flavors going off, and then if you age it for a year, it's more of a cohesive experience. You still get those flavors, but they're melded together.
Yeah.
And then another friend gave me a Sammy Claus, which is almost 15%.
Oh, yeah, that one too.
and again, loved it fresh, but yeah, with age, I think it's even better. The Dogfish Head ones were, again, it's so this is like just nostalgia for me thinking back that many years ago. But them putting ages with the best of them on the bottom, like, okay, I guess I'll try aging one of these too. So yeah, for me, it's hopefully it's better, hopefully it's different and as good. Hopefully it's not bad or whatever. And I have a pretty good track record, but some of the ones this year I'm prioritizing any ones that I have right now aging that are adjuncted, just drink them, see where they're at. And
Yeah. What do you mean, like adjuncts or like spices or something, like with chocolate or
so sorry, so
coffee?
not like I'm not counting barrel aging when I say adjunct here. So like if it has coffee in it, drink it
Yeah.
now, vanilla,
Yeah.
and I mean, coffee is a great example because you can get that bell pepper thing pretty quickly with some, and then some it's like years later I still get a strong coffee note. This soon I've already done the review, depending on when this goes, if it'll be out or not. But I did. Speaking of Goose Island, I don't know if you had that barley one they did that they had coffee in it, maybe
No.
2018.
I had a coffee Bourbon County, but I've never had a coffee barley one. I think I know what you're talking about though.
I think it was 2018, and I did not like it, and I was on purpose aging it, hoping the coffee would fade and it would just be the nice barley wine. So that one was very purposefully aged for a little over 5 years, and some of the coffee faded, so that was better, but it still had more than I wanted. But yeah.
Yeah, I actually got I used to be friends with one of the head brewers of Cigar City way back in the heydays of Facebook, like basically like the Obama years from 2008 to 2016 or whatever.
So long ago with that,
Yeah, like I hardly even use Facebook anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was friends with one of the head brewers there, and I had actually I don't know if I aged it. I think somebody sent me an aged bottle of Hunapu, which is basically like what we would call a hot chocolate stout now. It's got like peppers and coffee and all that stuff in it. And the brewer, like, he watched my review and he's like, no, you guys did all wrong. Don't age that beer because all the peppers and everything fall out. He actually sent me a fresh bottle. I'm pretty sure we did a fresh versus like a year-old vintage.
Okay.
Me and a bunch of friends of mine, we said, yeah, the fresh one's so much better. Yeah. I also think that, and also like just this week, I did like a 12.8% beer, 11.5, a 10, a 9, really strong beers.
Yep.
I think it's just the technology has evolved to the point where the fermentation control is like, even if you're getting like these high ABV beers, is that they can like really take out that harsh alcohol burn to it, or just like they can really massage that yeast. The yeast is happy.
Oh
no,
no,
I'm not a microbiologist.
No, it's wild. I think of triple IPAs too. Like in an IPA, I don't want to taste any alcohol. In a stout, I don't mind a little bit of alcohol, a barley wine, like a little bit but not in an. And people with technology, brewing process, whatever it is, I don't want to taste alcohol. And I had a pretty good run where I haven't had a triple. Not that I drink a ton of triple IPAs, but where I don't taste the alcohol. So yeah, there's definitely something to this. Yeah.
Speaking of triple, you and I just reviewed a triple, Belgian triple, that is.
So
that'll
good.
be on Kyle's channel.
Yeah.
I'll put a link in the description below.
Yeah.
Anyway, man, we're like almost 14 minutes in. We should kind of start at the beginning. So like, how did you first get into beer?
Yeah, I was always an adventurous eater, and then but beer, you go anywhere that had beer, it was like the same beers on draft and in bottles, and then I think I was at my then girlfriend's sister's rehearsal dinner, and there was a bottle that had a baseball cap, like it looked like a baseball on top of the bottle at the bar. I'm like, oh, I'll try that. I just I like trying new things, and it was from Cooperstown Brewing Company, which makes sense because of the Hall of Fame. I don't remember which beer, maybe Old Slugger it was. And I'm like, oh, this tastes different. Okay. And not bad, just like, oh, this has different flavors than like what beer tastes like.
Yeah.
And then I really like the fruity. Oh, go ahead.
Like when you say beer, you probably mean like macro lager.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like I went to college in Buffalo, so Labatt Blue was the first beer I actually liked, but I don't know how different that would be than any other stuff like Coors or whatever that I was drinking.
Yeah. Their recipes are very, very similar.
Right, exactly. So it's probably more of just like, oh, I'm in Buffalo, and that's what we drink in Buffalo, than actually the taste of it. But then like the fruited beers really appealed to me. I remember Abita's Purple Haze was an early one. Sam Adams Cherry Wheat. Those ones, like, okay, I like these fruit ones. Saranac's Blackberry Wheat, and then the floodgates just open. Like I was maybe a year or two ahead of the curve, not huge, but like a little bit. So it's like, oh, cool, we're getting Dogfish Head in the area. Oh, Ithaca's not that far. They make this beer called Flower Power. Like, so then trying that stuff. Then breweries started popping up, more local, and it just kind of all, kept happening. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you ever homebrew?
I have not messed around with that. No. Do you do that at all, or?
I used to when I used to live in Albany, and actually I did it briefly when I moved to Florida. But I found that my batches kept getting infected when I moved here. And I think it's just like it's so humid in here. A friend of mine said just because like
that's interesting.
It's so humid here is that the bacteria just kind of like floats in the air, whereas like where the dry air up north, they all just fall to the ground.
Oh, interesting. I mean, it stands to reason. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say anybody who's as hardcore a beer nerd as you and I you should definitely homebrew, even if you just do like a kit, like a Mr. Beer kit.
Yeah.
Because you learn so much that way. And especially if you go for a BJCP, like you don't have to become like a master Cicerone,
Yeah.
But you learn so much from actually doing it. I mean, it's kind of like, like we're basically like critics, and it's like kind of the difference between somebody who actually works in the industry and somebody who's just like an outsider. But when you do that home brewing, it's like you get that feel for like the actual science involved, because I mean, you don't have to know the super nitty gritty science to know, like, because like if you actually want to become a brewer, or even if you want to become just a certified BJCP, you just have to know like a little bit of chemistry and microbiology. And I would say pretty much everything you need to know is in this book, How to Brew by John Palmer.
Okay.
There's Charlie Papazian's book is really good too. But yeah, if you study for the BJCP exam, this is basically the syllabus.
Okay.
So, and you've also, like, you've probably heard terms like acetaldehyde, diacetyl, DMS, dimethyl sulfide. Like, you want to know, like, actually where that, like, what those mean and, like, how they happen. Like, this book and some other books will tell you that. And it's just, but, to become a beer judge, nobody expects you to be like have a 4-year chemistry degree or a 4-year microbiology degree. Although actually it's funny, most professional brewers that I've met, they do have degrees in one of those fields, and so they went into those fields thinking they wanted to be like, go into medicine and like cure diseases. And then somehow they just ended up in brewing.
Yeah.
And
a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
So but I mean, that they're going to geek out about it,
Yeah. Let's see. So speaking of BJCP and all that stuff, have you considered going into taking the test for BJCP or Cicerone?
I have not. I don't call it my shtick, but like for me, it's very much just, it's the end of the day. I've accomplished everything I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have a beer and I'm going to talk about it, and I think it's all good. We were talking, I don't know if it was either off camera or while we were doing the video that'll be on my channel, but like, I find this to be interesting. Sometimes when people say like, I don't do that thing, it sounds judgmental for people who do that thing. I love watching all sorts of different BeerTubers or whatever kind of content, right? Like sometimes I want the very specific scientific kind of stuff. Sometimes I just want like, do you like it or not? And everything in between. I get in the mood almost, like what kind of analysis do I want with depth? What am I looking for? And for me, it just fits my personality more. I don't have that type A personality for it. So it's just like, yeah, like, and it's interesting too, like I was saying before, being an adventurous eater, I do like eating a dish that I didn't prepare, and it's like, oh, I go like, is there fennel seeds in this? Is that what that little, I do like that aspect of it. But I wouldn't take it a step further, like, well, how do you grow the plant, you know? But if someone like knows about it, like my wife and I on our honeymoon went to a coffee plantation. Like I love coffee, and I can just mindlessly drink coffee. I can sip and really analyze it. But like the experts talking about the whole process, next level, loved every minute of it, you know?
You ever done any like culinary classes, or just like you have like a garden or anything?
Vicariously through him, in you know, we have like our little group chat with my friend Jim and Matt and I, and there are like culinary questions like, what would you know, pair this with, or what, you know, what acid makes the most sense for this idea I have. So we do use him as a resource quite a bit. Yeah, I'm a very curious person, but in some aspects, it still doesn't motivate me to go that next level necessarily, you know, but the appreciation's still there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But that's actually, sorry. But like, that was one of the things I was looking forward to doing videos with you, is the yin and the yang of you and I that way, you know, like to me, I'm like loving when you talk about those aspects of it, you know, it's really interesting to me. Even though I don't have
like the more like beer judgy,
technical, all those, for sure,
phenolics and esters. I mean, you don't have to be a beer judge. Like I said, like this book, or like there's really two books. Is
I heard the author of that.
One is Tasting Beer by Randy Mosier.
Yeah.
Like,
Mosier.
This is a great beer 101 book. Like, you'll learn. It's beer 101. It's not beer, 401. You know, or some kind of master's graduate level class. To me, like, it's funny because, like, if I go back and watch my old reviews, like 9 times out of 10, even though like I was at the time, like, you probably couldn't tell, or I don't know if you were watching me back in 2008, but a lot of times I was gonna like bullshitting, and now I watch myself and like I was like dead on, even though I was just kind of guessing. I was actually accurate on what I'm saying, because like take for example like old beer. I would always say, oh man, it's like tastes like lollipops. Like to me, that's still the oxidation character. Remember, I don't know, we're roughly the same age. I don't know if you were a kid and you like went to the bank and they would have like those lollipops, the loop handle, so you wouldn't choke on them. Like the yellow lemon lollipops. Or maybe you give them to your kids. I don't know. That taste is like, to me, that is the taste of oxidation, like a beer that's been sitting on the shelf forever. BJCP and some other organizations will say like refer to it as sherry, like sherry wine. Or cardboard. Because everybody's palate's different. And to me, like I kind of get the cardboard thing, but it has to be like super, super old. But if it's just, to me, it's just a little old, I'm getting lemon lollipop. I'm like, tastes like bank lollipop.
No, it's interesting. Like, you're right. Like the sensory experiences, how we could be talking about the same exact thing, but describing it 2 different ways. But then again, having these conversations a little bit longer form, it's like, oh no, I get that aspect of it. Like that makes sense to me. Yeah. Even though my mind didn't go there.
In some of my old reviews, I'll say, oh, this is like butterscotch. And that's probably diacetyl, which is, usually most beer styles, it's inappropriate. Some of the British styles, it's okay in small amounts, especially ringwood yeast. And that's something that I've noticed, is that beers that I used to hate, like I can appreciate now. Like also, especially since I moved from New York to Florida, there's just so many beer style. Like you can't even get like British beers around here anymore. I mean, aside from like Samuel Smith's, which I love, but they're usually super old, and it's like I wouldn't usually buy them out of the blue just for the heck of it. It'd have to be like for a reason. That's also what I notice is like, when you become like when you study, basically you just read these 2 books or you homebrew, and you learn just like basic 101, is you start to appreciate like what goes onto beer. And like I can buy a 4-pack of like PBR and Tall Boys and really enjoy it. Like I will I could suck down PBR
Yeah.
No problem. Or you guys have Aldi stores up there? I think you do. Yeah.
Yeah, but they don't sell beer there. I know what you're talking about, but they don't.
Oh,
They don't.
really? Because
No.
yeah, most Aldi sell beer, and
Or at least they haven't since I've been going. Yeah.
they have all these knockoff brands,
Yeah.
like, and they're like, that's everything Aldi is just a knockoff
Yeah.
of something else. Like they have a knockoff of Sam Adams, called like Independence Ale, and then they have a knockoff of New Belgium Fat Tire they call like Boot Tread or something. They have their knockoff of Blue Moon is like High Tide or something like that. Like it's the color schemes are all the same.
Yeah.
But I will say they have a legit Pilsner, German Pilsner there called wernesgrüner.
Okay.
If you can find it, I would say pick it up, because to me, if you're actually going to judge that to spec, that is like on a 50-point scale, it's like at least a 40, maybe even a 45, depending on how fresh of a can or a bottle you can get. Yeah, and it's funny because like in my early days, like I just hated anything lager, anything just basic like that. And now it's like my favorite thing in beer is when low ABV beers are just like really, really tasty, especially like Kolsch.
Yeah.
Any kind of British cask pub ale like that, like any of the bitters, because those are all like, sub 5% ABV beers. I mean, as much as I love a good 15% ABV Bourbon County,
yeah.
I can't drink those all the time, but
yeah.
So is there like, what is like a small pleasure, or like what's something that you wouldn't expect to be like a pleasure as far as beer with you, or like, I should have wrote this question down, made it a little more comprehensive, but I think you know what I'm saying.
I get it. Well, you got me thinking a couple things for sure. Like there's the and I'm sure you get the same thing too with some people. There's like this misconception, like, oh, you're the beer guy, so like you wouldn't want a can of this at my backyard barbecue, would you? And it's like, no, I love that. Like I would be super happy with your Boston lager or whatever. Like, no, like that's a good beer to me, or like whatever, and do I like it? And we were talking, like, again, I forget if it's off camera at this point or on camera, but like I don't drink a ton that I don't review, so it is a lot of like IPAs, stouts, barley wines, whatever. But so yeah, it does seem like higher ABV stuff, but I do like some lower ABV stuff. And someone one time, they sent me a beer that was wrapped up as a mystery, and I really liked it. And it was like Miller Lite or Miller High Life. Like, okay, well, I mean, there's nothing more pure than I didn't know what that was, and I liked it. So
yeah,
certainly. What I had actually last night? We were out with some family, and I had the Fiddlehead, and I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't had that. They had it on draft. I'm like, I haven't had that in a long time, and but I'm like, I don't want a second beer, but they were doing a promo for Sam Adams non-alcoholic hazy, little hazy. I'm like, oh no, try that. I don't want any more alcohol tonight. That was really good, and that was about as small as you can get being a non-alcoholic beer. But yeah, I'm kind of like, I still like the big stuff, but I am kind of trending like, well, actually, I do like a nice pale ale that's 5%. It doesn't have to be a double IPA for me to be happy with it,
Yeah, I feel like the pale ale is like a dying style. Like the only pale ale you can get is like Sierra Nevada.
Well, and
around here.
And you read my mind, because that was so. For the first time last year, when I did my top beers, I did it by style, like just styles I drink a lot of, and that was the best pale ale I had last year. And I had a decent amount, and I live by Fidens, which is I want to say a new brewery, but they're like 5 years old at this point, and they have a nice pale ale called Teacher's Pet, and it's amazing. And I'm like, again, I love double IPAs, but pale ales, I like bitterness, so I don't mind that, and I love the 5% versus 8 or 9%, so, or 7 to 9%. So it's like, okay, I like that aspect too. Huge flavor still. But yeah, definitely, want to be trending down a little bit ABV wise.
Yeah. Yeah. I do not get this. There's been so many crazy trends in beer the last few years. I think like the hazy IPA doesn't really surprise me that much. Remember, I was drinking Heady Topper when it first came out.
Yeah.
Although actually a lot of people today will say that's not a hazy IPA because it's like what 100, 120 IBUs, and most hazies are like 30 or 40. You know. Um,
They walked so those guys could run, and I
yeah.
say that very sarcastically because I still love heavy so much.
Can you get that in stores now, or do you still have to like go to Vermont to get it?
They do drops in New York sometimes. Yeah, you can get it. Well, you know the places, Oliver's and Westmere by me. Like they'll
Yeah.
get drops, and then you
Yeah,
can.
it's funny.
I mean, relatively easy. Go grab a 4-pack. Yeah.
Yeah, Kyle, the beer stores you just mentioned are where I used to go to, and like now I get most of my beer online.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, on Tavor or Beer Drop. Which, if you watch my show, you know I always say link in the description below. Use my link, you get $10 off. Because like the only beer stores around here are basically like Total Wine, and
Okay.
like that's like it's the same three things. It's like hazy IPAs, pastry stouts, and kettle sours, and then like there's the perennial year-round stuff, but like a lot of them are like collecting dust, and it's just you don't know how old they are, you know.
You had commented that thought on a recent video of mine, and it's there's a lot of truth to that. I do like hazy IPAs. At no point am I, down on them. I really like that. But there are all these other styles I really enjoy, and it just my drinking habits, what people like will send me, like I want to hear your thoughts on this. I do end up drinking a lot of hazy IPAs, and then it, like I was saying, the video that's on my channel, that St. Bernard's triple, 2 or 3 times in that video, I'm like, I can't believe it's been years since I had this beer. I'm loving this beer so much, and that's the double-edged sword of beer reviews is I want to do the new stuff. I do some re-reviews of the same beer, but not often. And it's just like, wait, but by doing that, these beers I love, I'm like going years without having. That's lame,
Yeah, it's funny because like, the stuff that's showcased in like books like this, or even like in the BJCP style guidelines, like if you just pick a beer and like they'll say like commercial examples. So I just randomly picked sorry, it's not on camera. American IPA, regular American IPA. Commercial examples, Bell's Two Hearted Ale. Haven't had that in a long time. Cigar City Highlight. That's made a couple hours away from me. I haven't drank that in a long time. Fatheads Headhunter. I think that's a West Coast beer. I've never had it. Ferguson Walker Union Jack. Haven't had that in like a decade. Maine Lunch. Russian River Blind Pig.
That's a good one too. Those are all great beers.
I can't get that here. It's funny because you actually have that Piney the Elder sign right above your head. And your channel is called No Hype Beer Reviews. How did you come up with that name?
I was shocked that it wasn't taken. It popped into my head when I was thinking about doing the channel, and I'm like, someone's got to have that name. But for me, it's always had two meanings. And like people bust my chops, like you review a lot of hype beer. I'm like, well, okay, there's two meanings. There's if I'm reviewing a hyped beer, I don't want to let the hype influence me. So no hype, like it's just another beer, And then the other one was I want to actively review plenty of beers that are not hyped. And I don't know how much we want to talk inside baseball or not, but like in real life, the video that I posted yesterday was from a local brewery. That beer was amazing, but they're not hyped, and it doesn't have many views. And I'm like, man, like I wish people, because like it's another local brewery. I want to prop up the local stuff, and like, man, that beer was amazing, and it's down on views because people don't know the brewery.
If it's a local and it's not distributed anywhere.
Yeah, like, and I do get that aspect. Like, well, I can't pick it up, fair enough. But like, it's like, oh, it's so good because I want to like hype up these good locals, or it doesn't have to be local, or just like this is good. Again, like the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, that is amazing. Like that's like hands down Mount Rushmore beer, and people need to visit that or revisit that.
Yeah, that's the beer. Like if you go to like some towny bar or like just a bar that's like not like beer centric at all. Like if they have that on tap, first of all, that's like a miracle. I mean, maybe you'll have like Yingling or Guinness. If a good, even a halfway decent bartender, if they can do like a half and half of like Yingling and Guinness, like that's a great combo.
Yeah.
All you need is that turtle thing. You just put it right on top of the pint glass.
Yeah.
I had a half and half of Guinness like a week or two ago, and I haven't had one of those in a long time. It was really good.
I have not done that move in a while, and it's a good move. Yeah, it's funny because like going again, it's like nostalgia thing, thinking back to like the beer journey. Back in the day, yeah, going to a bar, if they had Yingling or Sierra Nevada Pale Ale or Boston Lager, it was a huge win having one of those, you know.
Yeah.
And it was always a go-to order for my buddies and I, like, oh, cool, they have this. We should go and grab it. Yeah.
Yeah, if you somehow end up at like Applebee's or Chili's, like on the menu, it'll just say Sam seasonal. You
Yeah.
know?
Hey, you know, I'll still take it, but yeah,
it's a mystery because like which
Yeah.
seasonal they make, you know, a bunch every season, you know.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned Sam Adams cherry wheat, and I don't think they make that anymore. I
don't think so.
Yeah, there's a review on my channel from one of the, you know, back in the early days, and I'm like, oh, it's like carbonated cough syrup. I haven't had that one in a while. I don't know if it would still taste like that because, like, to me, it was just so artificially flavored.
Yeah. Well, I wonder that, and it was interesting because someone commented to me like, you should revisit some beers you used to love, and I'm like, okay, so like, what are the ones that are still produced? Okay, I bet Purple Haze could grab still, and I wonder how much I would like it. I mean, I used to love that beer so much, and there was a bar that would have it that we would go to trivia night, and I would just get pictures of it for the table, and a guy heard, I went to the bar to order it. Guy heard how much it cost versus what he was buying pictures of, and he called me a couple pretty choice names, and I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I like this beer. I don't care that it's fruited. Like, you can say whatever you want to me, dude. But yeah, I do wonder now because that was 15 years ago. I'm like, I wonder if I still like that beer at all. You know,
not to, unfortunately, to date this particular episode, like the other day you did a video called like "Don't Google It."
Oh yeah,
you should turn that into a regular thing called like do it like as like a game show or something. Like maybe you could like you could do like prizes or something.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah.
Although it's really hard to do that, like because people would just cheat because they would just look it up or whatever. Like maybe you could do it like as a live show where people could call in.
That would
like,
be
do they still make this beer? Although they could still Google it. I guess
there's really had the best comment for that. This is like celebrity. Are they alive?
Yeah, are they still alive?
That was the best comment on that video. Yeah.
A good one would be George Killian's Irish Red. Remember that one?
Yeah. But even like you said, like the Samuel Adams cherry wheat, I don't think they still make that, but they might. I don't really know for sure.
I mean, like anything Sam Adams, like they could revive.
True.
For like, because they do a seasonal mix pack every, you know, quarter. The problem with Sam Adams is, and well, it's not just Sam Adams, it's like every brewery that big, is that all their seasonal beers are like 6 months off. I guarantee you right now, even though we're recording this in January, I guarantee you right now, some brewery somewhere is making a summer seasonal, if not a pumpkin beer.
Yeah. Definitely a pumpkin beer in January. No,
I'm gonna grab another drink. I'll be right back. I'm drinking a LaCroix lime, not a hard seltzer, a soft seltzer. Man, the hard seltzer trend is the most. Well, actually, I think the non-alcoholic beer trend is the most baffling to me. But the hard seltzer, I remember when that right before they came out, because I had a friend that worked in, I think he still works for one of the major distributors. He's like, oh yeah, hard seltzers. Because remember, Not Your Father's Root Beer?
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna blame the hard seltzer trend on that beer because that was like, hey, we can make beer that tastes like soda, but it also is alcoholic.
Yeah.
And you would think they would have made like more like hard sodas, but they didn't. Aside from like hard ginger ale or whatever, or root beer,
because they did.
White Claws came out, and literally like half of the selection of craft beer at Total Wine is now just all hard seltzer.
That's interesting. The Not Your Father's Root Beer, that is very thought-provoking to me. I really like that as an idea. It's kind of like the floodgates opening. It's got alcohol. It's not a cocktail.
But it has alcohol.
Yeah, that's interesting. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. The hard seltzer thing. I don't like seltzer ever. Like I like it's just. I think it's a carbonic acid. I don't like that flavor. So it's never appealed to me. But like when my own dad, like I went to his cottage and he had like stock of hard seltzer, I'm like, oh, this is a thing. Like even my dad's drinking less because he got into craft beer a little bit. And it's like, wow, like he's doing this. I'm like, this must be a thing. It's like, wait, my sisters are doing it, my dad's doing it. It's like, this is a big thing. And then the numbers obviously were showing as well. Well, and then breweries, like you go to, I don't know, 1 out of 3 breweries. I don't know what the number really would be. And it's like, oh, they're making a hard seltzer even.
Yeah, I don't even know how they're made either. It seems like you would just take regular seltzer and like, couldn't they just get some discount cheap vodka and just like, you know?
Yeah, I would. I went to Canada once, and it was interesting because like their Smirnoff Ice actually it wasn't a malt liquor; it had a shot of Smirnoff actually in it. So I don't know if that's just different laws that govern that or something. So I don't even know how they make hard seltzer.
I used to love Smirnoff Ice when that first came out because to me that's basically it just tastes like lemonade.
Yep.
Even Mike's Hard Lemonade. I used to do not on this channel because like this channel. When I first started doing Chad's beer reviews, it was at Chad976 on YouTube.
Okay.
And it was for years. And then I started branching out into like I would do like I'd do like Mike's Hard Lemonade and Smirnoff Ice and stuff like that. They even made like a hard Arnold Palmer. Maybe they still do. I don't know.
Oh, I have seen that. I don't know if they still do, but I've definitely seen it. Yeah.
And then I realized this was before YouTube even gave the option to change your handle name. So I just started an entire new channel called @Chad's Beer Reviews, and I just started posting all the beer reviews in order. And I kind of like now this channel it hit 1 million views like last summer, which is great. But if I had kept it on @Chad976, probably like at 2 million or so. Yeah, I don't know what the point of that was, but speaking of YouTube, like what was the inspiration of starting your own YouTube channel? Because like it's funny because like I used to do a show like this like about 10 years ago. I still have all those podcasts saved. I didn't call them podcasts at the time, which is basically what they were. I think I might start uploading those for members. If you're a member of this channel, you'll be able to see it.
That's cool.
Because like one thing I would always ask somebody is just like, who the hell do you think you are to go on the internet and tell people what you think about beer?
Yeah.
Especially if you're not a certified beer judge or cicerone or something like that. I'm being facetious, of course, but like, what was the inspiration to I want to go on YouTube and talk about beer?
Yeah, so at the time I was living alone, and again, like we were talking about, like getting into craft beer, and I had friends who also were getting into it, so there'd be like the small bottle share, like, okay, coming over to my apartment, we'll have, these 3 Dogfish had, 750 milliliters I bought at, Wegmans or whatever. And someone else like, yeah, let's do a Belgian night at my house, like whatever. Right. And then, but if I was home alone and I wanted a beer, I was just like, well, let me see what flavors people are getting. It was really just trying to learn about, like, I think this is piney. Is that a thing that people say when they drink this beer? And then I saw, oh, there's videos about it, not just things to read. So then it was, a big one for me, and he just disappeared, was, what was that?
Beer Geek Nation?
Yeah, Beer Geek, which, he had a big channel, so that was obviously, and, and it's so funny how the algorithm works, and I told you this already, like when you do those videos of like, top 20 beer reviewers of the month, or whatever, I thought I knew a lot of the people, not like personally knew, but knew of a lot of these channels, or most of these beer review channels. I didn't know a drop in the bucket, and it's so interesting how the algorithms are. And sometimes you get pockets of like, well, these people clearly know each other or interact more, and then these people do whatever.
And those are just the English speaking channels. There's a guy in Poland, I forget his name, Brower. It's Brower something, but he does all his videos in Polish, and for whatever reason, like you can't turn on subtitles, and it gets like 20,000 views an episode.
Wow!
Which makes Simon at Real Ale Guide look like nothing, but
he's
probably like the biggest beer tuber on the planet, but he only does it in Polish.
that's so wild. Yeah, that like it's that specific. Because if you're going in English, I mean, that's a decent number of countries either speak English or like they're in the EU and it's like their second language, so they could watch. Yeah, it's yeah. So I guess yeah, just watching other people and then yeah, just being like, I could do that, and certainly not that I'm like I don't have a huge channel, obviously, but like the fact that anyone would watch is it still blows my mind. Like anyone wants to hear my thoughts about anything. It's like, oh, okay, um, and then it just kind of became the habit of doing it. Like we were saying, like, if I'm drinking a beer, I'm probably reviewing it. Like it's 99 out of 100 beers I'm drinking at the house I reviewed. It's weird if I'm drinking a beer and not posting it to the internet. It's goofy.
Yeah, I'm like that too. It's unless like I'm out on a date or something, but
well, yeah,
like,
yeah.
Basically, any beer I'm drinking, it's like almost every beer. Or I should say, it's not that it's most beers that I bring home. I'm bringing home to review for the show, or at least for Instagram, or Untapped or whatever. Speaking of which, speaking of ratings, because we were saying, I think it was off camera, like you're saying, like you don't really give a beer a score. I mean, I could see that. It's kind of like, because it was funny, a long time ago when I was a kid, like in high school and in college, my critic in me started out as a movie reviewer, and like this is in the 90s, and there were certain, like, remember like GeoCities and Tripod and Lycos and all, like those build your own blog sites. There were tons of people doing movie reviews on those sites, or even on the old news forums or whatever they're called, like basically what Reddit is now.
Okay.
Yeah, the news forums. I forget what they're called. But yeah, so I met like other beer or movie critics that way, and a lot of people, they wouldn't like give a movie a rating. Like even like be like I would be like, well, even Roger Ebert, that still scores a movie on a 4-point scale or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like you can tell how much I liked it if you read the review. I'm like, well, you know what? Some people don't have the patience to read the review. They just jump right to the end and see the score.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So and again, to me, it's people doing things differently. The only thing I judge anyone on is if they're hurting someone else, right? Like everything else is just personal preference, and people have similar or different thoughts about things. Part of it for me is being a teacher. So like in New York State, 85 to 100 is considered mastery, right? So if I'm like drinking a beer and I rate it an 85, I'm like, this beer is amazing. They've mastered this style, but then to someone else, that 85, maybe is not a good score, or so like you also get and I understand too that you would start to understand that, okay, when this person's talking about this beer style, does this sync up to my thoughts about that or not? And then you kind of take it, they're always 10% better or worse than I think, right? And that's fair. It just seemed like something else that people could like argue with me about, that I'm like, I don't feel like like this is my thought, period, not me saying something because I want to engage with an art. Like, I don't know. It just, and like I was saying again, at this point, having done the video, talked off camera, and now back on camera, I forget when I said it, but I grade a lot of stuff every day. So it's just like, by the end of the day, I'm a little hoarse and I don't want to be grading things, but I do appreciate, it's an interesting thing because I do appreciate sometimes when I'm watching a beer review or reading an article about it or whatever, and they do have a rating. Like, so it's something I do appreciate, but I don't do it myself. And also I think just doing the long format, and I'm sure you've had similar things with, whether like a person who likes your take on beer gives you beer because they want to hear your feedback, or a brewery's like, I want to hear feedback. If it's just a score, to me, that's pretty worthless. I want to hear the thoughts with the score, or just the thoughts. Like, I'm okay with just the thoughts, or the thoughts with the score. I couldn't care less about just the score, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That's why, that's one of the downsides of Untapped is, I'd say like at least 90, maybe even 95, maybe even 99% of the users on there, they will just give a beer a grade, but not say anything about it. And they turned it into basically Twitter. I think they give you 240 characters. So if you follow me on Instagram, what I do is every night when I, review the beer, I take a picture of it, and then I write the review on Untappd into 240 characters, which is usually enough to say what I want to say about the beer. Sometimes I wish I had like another 50 or so.
Yeah.
And then I just copy and paste that to Instagram. And, obviously I get a lot more views on Instagram.
Yeah.
And
Well, and
actually, years ago, I used to have a blog that I write like probably 100 to 250 words, maybe even 500 words. And that's kind of how I got the book deal. But I think the Untappd /Instagram /Twitter, 240 characters or so, I think is enough to kind of convey the point. Some beers are much more complex than others, and like there's more nuance and a lot more to say about it. Some are just like super basic, and like I'll have to like pad the review to just kind of fill up all those 240 characters. I forget where I was going with this, but
to build off of this topic, not that like a ton of breweries send me beer, but that's something, except for the brewery who had like a third party contact me, the other ones very explicitly said, I need like long form feedback. Like the Untappd scores people put, like maybe they give me a 3.5 for this beer. Do they like the style? Do they not like the style? Like it doesn't give me any feedback that's usable, especially if the brewery doesn't have a tap room, so don't get to have the human interactions. It just seems like not that it seems like it has always happened. We're like, no, like the long form, like you're gonna take the time to actually talk about it, and that's what I want to hear. But again, I love long form with the score. I just don't. If it's just a score, it doesn't mean anything to me.
100% agree.
Yeah.
So that actually brings me to, I should have asked this question towards the beginning of the episode, but like, what's your rubric? What's your criteria? Because like for me, like it's always been a kind of, well, not 50-50, but I'm like there's a difference between styles and like personal preference or hedonistic, because like the average beer snob will like or like just go on Rate Beer or Beer Advocate and look at like the highest rated beers of whatever, and they're all imperial stouts, imperial IPAs, Belgian quads, stuff like that. And anything macro lager is obviously towards the bottom, but as we were saying earlier, like I love when like a lower basic style like surprises me, like a Kolsch or English bitter or something like that. Like you can get tons of flavor out of that. So I mean, like I'll take a 100-point Kolsch over a 80-point imperial stout any day. So like when you're watching Chad's beer reviews, to me it's, first of all, how well is it to the style, and also like the mechanics. Like it's a funny thing about judging beer, especially when you're actually judging like at a competition, is you have this style guideline that's like it's objective, but it's this weird paradox of where you're judging something objectively but subjectively at the same time, because it's like, well, this is great for the style, but I think it's disgusting. A great example of that, sorry to toot my own horn here, but
no, again, that's what I like about this. Again, this like yin and the yang thing. Like I really am enjoying this.
Like my Tuesday night beer school about a month ago, my girlfriend and I, Christina, we did Christmas beers, or winter seasonal beers, as the BJCP would call it. And one of the beers was Southern Tier 2 Xmas. And like going by the guideline, she's like, yeah, this is a great example of the style. But she actually hated the beer. She detested it. She was like, this is so gross. But she still scored it like, I think like a 45 out of 50.
Okay.
And like that is, I'm like, Chris, you are the ultimate beer judge. Like you hate this beer, but you still gave it a fair review. So when you're doing your show, like what's your rubric? What's your criteria?
Yeah, I definitely have some thoughts about this. Would I buy it again is definitely a thought I have. Like, okay, so I had this once, would I do it again? There was a beer I reviewed recently, I can't remember which one it was, where I'm like, and I said in the review, if I was somewhere and I could get it as part of a flight, so like 3 to 5 ounces, I would have it again. I wouldn't buy another bottle of it. Like, it was just interesting to think about, like, going back to your movie, the movie critic part of it too. Like, there's movies I like that I wouldn't want to watch again, but I kind of like the movies I come back to thinking about are the ones that have rewatchability, and that for me definitely translates to beer, where it's less for me about to style. It's more, is it delicious or not? Would I buy it again? And one of the things I think a lot about, so this is I would argue this is the same realm of thought, but a little bit different direction, is let's say the beer, has coffee in it. And I think it's so the bottler can says coffee stout, let's say, right? And I drink it, I'm like, this is delicious, but I don't taste any coffee.
Mm-hmm.
How much should that influence my opinion of the beer?
Yeah, I agree.
Right? Like, because well, it's a coffee stout. So like, there's the aspect of, I love this beer, I would buy this beer again, etc. But then it's not what it says it is. Or like, that was a good example before with your girlfriend. This idea of like, I guess it's like the 180 of that actually. Like, I love the taste of it, but it doesn't drink like a Doppelbock, but I love the taste of it. That's kind of where
it's a weird synergy of like a consumer and like a beer judge. Like exactly like the review that I just posted. Sorry, it's posted as we're filming this. I did this review last night of this Imperial Stout. It's rum barrel aged with cherries and coconut.
Okay.
And it does taste like an Imperial Stout with cherries and coconut, but I got like no barrel aging on it whatsoever.
Yeah.
So like, even though it's really tasty and like it's for 12.8, it was like really, really drinkable. Like, I couldn't score it at super high because it says rum barrel aged and I get no barrel character on it at all. So like, I think I give it an 8 out of 10.
But like,
yeah, I'm like that too.
And again, I think this is like the perfect example of it. There's the likability of it, and then to the style, and those are not synonyms. Those are not the same thing. It could not be to style but delicious. It could be awful but to style. Those they're two different end goals. Judging it to a style versus just what I wanted again or not. That's interesting.
I used to write a beer blog for the Albany Times Union.
Oh, really?
And I don't know if they still have it or not. It's called Beer Nut. It was started by George DiPiero. He runs Druthers Brewing.
Oh, yeah.
He used to be the head brewer at Albany Pump Station, which I believe they sold to somebody, didn't they?
A different local brewery. So it's still like local, but yes.
Yeah. Well, anyways, so one of the blogs I wrote for them, and I should really revisit this. I said, are you tasting the beer or the cachet or the because it's like, certain beers, like basically anything from like Treehouse or Hill Farmstead, Pliny the Younger, like, and kind of like the whole theme of your channel, No Hype Beer Reviews. Like the hype. It's the cachet. It's people are drinking the cachet. And I noticed this especially a lot on Untapped and on Instagram and Twitter, when I used to use Twitter. I haven't been on Twitter in a long time. Is that people are basically they're tasting the cachet. It's also like the work for it. Like I don't know how easy it is to get Hill Farmstead now, because I remember back when I lived there, it's like you got to go on a 4 or 5 hour drive to the Canadian border and wait in line and get Hill Farmstead. And people loved it. And I'm like, well, of course you love it because you got to put in all that work to get it. And like, now you can go to the Ruck in Troy, and it's not like all 20 taps are Hill Farmstead, but you get it like at least 1 or 2 there. Same thing with like Hetty Topper. So it's kind of like, are you tasting the beer or the cachet or the what's the opposite of the cachet? Something that's like a bad thing. I forget what the word is, but you know what I mean?
I mean, it's classic supply and demand, like the supply was less, or it was harder to get. So like the supply to you as an individual was less, but you're seeing it's on, Beer Advocate, it's wherever, highly ranked. So demand is high. So it must taste better. It must be worth more. And that's not reality. It's just, and it is funny to me. And sometimes a brewery upscales and they do have to have some time to figure out the new system, and the beer is not quite as good, even though, and they're brewing more of it. But it is fun to me, like, as some of these beers become more easily available, they magically are less delicious. And it's like, and again, there can be issues with upscaling. I understand the reality of that. But sometimes it's like, no, it's the same system. They just started distributing to your state. So now you don't have to trade for it. It's still the same beer on the same system, same brewers making it.
Yeah. And exactly what you were just saying there is that I also wrote an Onion style like parody or satire piece. Because I remember when the Ruck in Troy, have you been there?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite bars of all time.
Yeah.
When they first started getting like Hill Farmstead beers, like I said, they only get like maybe one or two.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote this parody piece. It was exactly like something you would read in the Onion or one of those satire fake news magazines like that. And it said local beer snobs outraged that plebs are able to get Hill Farmstead so easily.
But people really feel that way. Like
they didn't pay their dues. I had to go to the Canadian border in the snow and
middle of nowhere
line for 10 hours. And these people, they just show up at the bar and buy it.
And it magically doesn't taste as good. Yeah, it's so, I don't know. It's like sometimes it's been a while since I've been to a beer share, or bottle share, but just some people, it's like how special they felt that I am bestowing this beer upon you, and it's just like, that's awesome that you brought it, you scored it, you brought it. I appreciate that, but I'm not going to kiss the ring. It's still just beer at the end of the day, and I don't know. People just, it's so funny. And again, to come full circle a little bit, that's why to me it's just, do I think it's delicious or not? And for the upteen time, I appreciate the more in-depth analytical approach, and that does interest me to hear. But at the end of the day, for me, it's consumption through taste buds. So it should just, it's the most important thing to me is, does it taste good or not? Would I want to drink it again? Was it worth the price? Like those kinds of questions I come back to. But the same thing is true. I mean, there's, again, going back to movies, it's a good analogy or a good parallel thought process. There's movies I love that would never win an award, but I still love them and would rewatch them. So the enjoyment's still there, but I understand that there are more well-constructed films.
I was gonna make a list of lightning round questions. I mean, I have a bunch right here, but
or whatever, however you want to do this. First one, right? Let's figure it out.
What is the plural of Guinness?
It's got to be Guinness, right? I don't know. I
think it's just Guinnesses.
Probably Guinnesses. I would just word it. I'm going to have a few Guinness tonight. That's how I would probably just avoid it
like sheep. Yeah, so it's just the same word.
Yeah.
What's the most you're willing to pay or have paid for a single bottle?
You want this lightning round or explanation?
Yeah. As
$2.50 for Utopias.
Oh, okay. That's understandable. The most
I won one. I won one in a raffle, so I spent $20 and won the raffle. And then once I tried, I'm like, oh, I really like this. So then I was like, well, at least I know I like it. And then I bought another one.
I paid $100 for a bottle of lambic, unblended lambic from Belgium. You can't get those in the States. Anything that says lambic here is actually a goose.
Is it like a Chardonnay or not Chardonnay, a champagne kind of thing? I think it's a regional specificity, or
yeah, it's just something that they don't really bottle, so it's difficult to get out. You have to actually go to the brewery in Belgium to get it. Let's see. Agree or disagree? There is no such thing as an unbiased review of anything.
I agree that there's no such thing as unbiased.
Yeah, everybody has their own preferences and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, if it was blind completely, maybe, because it's blind, but anyway.
This kind of touches on what we were just talking about, but What is your reaction when a beer that used to be a whale is now available in every gas station?
I love it. I want more people enjoying delicious things. Life is short. Be happy and don't hurt anyone.
Who or what influences your beer buying decisions? Like, is there like, yeah, I guess like what makes you want to buy a beer? Like because somebody on Beer Advocate said it was awesome, or somebody on Twitter, or just a friend of yours, or you watch other BeerTubers?
Yeah, I have a couple answers. My wife, because she sees the receipts, because we can claim it on our taxes. So I gotta be mindful how much I'm spending and not spending. But yeah, no, like actually, kind of like I was saying earlier, if I kind of get a feel for someone else's thoughts, and if we have similar thoughts and they like it, that definitely makes me feel inclined. I do like watching other beer reviews for sure. Yeah.
Is there a difference between a double IPA and an imperial IPA?
In my own mind, yes, Imperial IPA would be more bitter, but I don't know if that's stylistically a thing or not. But it's like porter versus stout to me. A porter's a little thinner. I don't know if that's accurate, but that's in my head how it works.
Or is a triple IPA or even a quadruple IPA, is that a real thing, or is that just like a marketing term?
Oh, I like that question. I like the distinction. But
It's like triple what,
But it's just based on like, it's 1 or 2 percentage points higher in alcohol.
Yeah. Let's see. I already asked you about selling beer. Who has the better bourbon barrel aged stout franchise, Goose Island or Founders?
Oh, Goose Island to me, yeah.
Yeah, I would say, I would agree with that. Although I actually kind of like KBS better than regular Bourbon County, but it's also KBS has chocolate and coffee in it.
And it's not a 1-to-1. Yeah,
just
that's a fair distinction. Yeah.
If you drink an Oktoberfest in December or a Christmas beer in February, does that seem weird to you?
Yes, but I wouldn't judge someone doing it. Yeah. I'm team like people won't drink pumpkin beers after Halloween, and I'm like, no, at least through Thanksgiving. Come on.
in retrospect, which IPA substyle, which they don't really make anymore, was the dumbest? Like white IPA, black IPA, rye IPA.
Okay, so
IPA.
I have a thought for one of my Thursday videos, and I'll just spoil it. Brute, I think was. I'm not surprised that went so quickly. What a silly thing I thought that was. Yes.
Yeah. All right. This might be hard to answer since neither of us are actually brewers or in the beer industry. But do you think, and I think it's easier to sell a lame beer with an awesome label than it is to sell an awesome beer with a lame label?
Okay, I have definitely thought about this a lot. Why do some breweries get more hype than others? Because like you mentioned Maine's Lunch earlier, that's certainly not a particularly catchy label, but the label was that good that people knew that was a whale or whatever, Right. Now I can get it at Trader Joe's, but yeah, like that, it was hard to get and it was delicious, and the label is not eye-catching. Humans are visual creatures, so definitely a cool label will hook people into a beer that's not as good, but you can have your cake and eat it too with that. You could have an awesome, funny, whatever label, and the liquid can be delicious. But yeah, that's a tough, I like that you asked it lightning round, but that's a question you could get some in-depth analysis on.
I think
it's a cool question.
I'm living proof of that. I mean, well, you can't see my fridge on camera here, but like when I go on Tavor or even when I just go to Total Wine, like almost everything is in cans now, and so like they're doing the full wraparound label.
Yeah,
like they're hiring like comic book artists and stuff.
Yeah,
and some of these labels are like just like crazy funny labels or like blacklight labels. I'm just like, I'm getting that, or like anything that has a cat on it, I would probably buy.
It is, but we're visual creatures. It is not surprising. Yeah.
Do you follow any beer news or like beer magazines? Do you follow the news of the industry that close, or
not close? This is definitely one of those ones where it's other people who I follow posting those video or well, sometimes they film videos or they just post links to articles, and it's that to me is much more like if that headline intrigues me, then I go and read about it. Yeah.
Listen to any beer podcasts?
No, but not for any bad reason. I used to, but then I started riding to work with a guy who's not into beer, so we just kind of talk on the ride. But because I have an hour and a half commute every day, like round trip every day, so I used to listen to podcasts a lot, but not so much anymore.
Well, when this comes out, now you have a reason to listen.
Oh yeah, I'll make them listen to this.
And what other beer tubers do you watch, or beer influencers in general?
Yeah. No, I love that question. Yeah, I used to watch a few people every video, and in a cool way, I've just gotten to know more and more people. So now I think I'm like a lot of consumers where it's not so much I watch anyone's like every video anyone posts, but it's more of like I'm drinking that same beer. I want to hear their thoughts, or I'm thinking of buying that beer, or I've never I would like to try it, but I don't know, like that kind of stuff is more what draws me now. But some of my best buddies are the Nerd Sense guys, Sean and Mike, Joe from the Beer Patrol, Joe from Giles Arcade, Matt from Massive Beer Reviews, Keith 93 Lumber. I'm trying to think of, Dan and Mike from FLX Beer Reviews. This is one of those questions I'm gonna feel bad if I leave out any of my buddies.
Yeah.
But these weren't people I was
friends from Chad's Beer Reviews.
Well, this is a new friendship and it's rad, and it was what a funny way to kind of start talking to each other, and it's cool. We filmed 2 things today,
Yeah.
But yeah, like but those people, I wasn't friends with those people before any of this. It was all through doing this that I've become, friends. But yeah, no, and again, just to plug that one more time on your end, posting those videos of other beer channels that I've just never even heard of. So it's just the exposure has been awesome, and checking out new people, channels. It's awesome.
Speaking of which, let people know where they can find you. I'll put all your links in the description.
No Hype Beer Reviews. So it's the same name, No Hype Beer Reviews. YouTube, Untapped, and Instagram are the 3 I'm on.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks for being the first guest on Chad's Beer Podcast. I'm sure I'm going to look back on this a couple of years from now and be like, oh, I didn't know what I was doing back then.
I think this was very professional, and this will be the best one you ever do. No, thanks for having me. This was a real honor and treat.
Congratulations on being the first. It was either you or Joe from Joe's Arcade. So
there you go. He's a great dude. I get to meet him.
I think I'm going to interview with him tomorrow. We'll see. But
cool.
Anyway, check out Kyle at No Hype Beer Reviews. Is it nohypebeerreviews.com? Do you have a domain?
I don't have a website. I don't know. I'm so lazy with this stuff.
You should still register it and then just redirect it to your YouTube. That's what mine is. If you go to chadsbeerreviews.com, it just takes you to YouTube.
I like that idea. That's cool.
Yeah, it's $10 a year.
That's not bad. Yeah.
All right, so this is going pretty long. If you watched or listened all the way to the end, you're awesome. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye, guys.